So, a couple of weeks ago now in Australia, we saw the release of the fourth instalment of the Despicable Me franchise, the aptly named Despicable Me 4. Now, I was honestly a bit of a latecomer to the hype surrounding Despicable Me. I didn't see the first or second films in theaters or Minions, and I think like many teens of my era, I saw boomers using Minions memes on Facebook, and I determined that if boomers found it funny, it indeed must be cringe. And so I swore off all of it, until my girlfriend sat me down and got me to watch the first 3 movies, and I actually thought they were a lot of fun. The first film especially was a breath of fresh air, and the second film and then the Minions spin-off, they were really good too. Were they top-class stuff? Nah, not really. But these films are just fun. You don't have to see much of a deeper meaning to things, even though there is a lot of heart to be had in these films. Not every movie needs to be a golden era Pixar-type film filled with allegory and deeper themes. Sometimes you just want to laugh. And that's what this franchise has done over and over again with overwhelming success. Particularly commercial success. The first film did very well for itself, considering it was the first film for an unknown studio, grossing over $500 million. The sequel almost crossed $1 billion. And then Minions well and truly did just that, grossing $1.1 billion all up, not too shabby. And yet, whilst critics sometimes don't rate the films, for what they are, they're a whole lot of fun. And at the heart of them, they're compelling stories. The first film, far more streamlined than the rest. The second film becoming a bit more ambitious and introducing multiple story threads to be carried throughout the film, and that's all well and good, and for me it worked well, until it didn't. The third film, I didn't rate it honestly, no doubt about it, it was a raging financial success, crossed the big billion as well, so it's not like you could ever call it a flop or a failure of a movie. I felt like the story was very disjointed, was kind of dull, and whilst the classic characters, like the daughters, they kind of got shuffled off to the side by the narrative, so I was very disillusioned by the third one. And because of that, I wasn't really that hyped for Minions Rise of Gru, but hey, that one was also a financial success, almost grossing $1 billion too. And I very much enjoyed it. It felt fresh. It was a very good prequel. And so, I don't know, I was a bit unsure coming into the fourth. Would they have managed to bring back that feeling of goofy fun from the first 2? Or would it be like number 3, a bit old, a bit tired, too many story threads that aren't woven together very well? I mean, it looks like it's going to be a success. I think this franchise is failure-proof at this point. It won't be as big as Inside Out 2, but the projections for its release, they're strong to say the least. It's probably going to have a $100 million opening weekend, which, well, that remains to be seen, but not too shabby. And so I went to see the movie, and I think I liked it better than I liked the third one. There was a lot to enjoy, but at the same time, I do think it didn't quite live up to the standard you want to see from these movies at this point. And so far, the critical score on Rotten Tomatoes as of writing this, 56%, it kind of feels deserved, because I walked away from it having enjoyed it, but also feeling very whelmed by the whole thing. It had its moments, but it also had a few things that I think dragged down the whole experience immensely, and that's a shame, because with the second Minions film, I felt like the whole vibe was back on track. And so Despicable Me 3 had to have been an aberration, but maybe not. But yeah, I guess we can jump into it now. As usual, when we look at an animated movie, you have to look at 3 major categories. We're talking story, visuals, and music/sound. Now, the visuals, I don't think they're coming close to that top tier where the best of the best in animation dwell. Pixar, at times Disney, although not recently. Wish, ooh. But yeah, animation, it's heavily stylized, and it fits really well for the world in which these characters inhabit. The story type that they're telling. But at the same time, it's not like we're all sitting here thinking, oh, this is groundbreaking stuff or a visual masterpiece. In actuality, it's just a nice, healthy average. I really don't think the quality's evolved that much over the years, if we're being perfectly honest. Next up, we gotta talk audio. Music and voice acting. Yeah, soundtrack was nothing really groundbreaking. No really massive standout song in my opinion. Nothing like Happy from the first film at least. But I don't really think the film suffers because of that, because ultimately, it's not a film that lives or dies by the soundtrack like something from Disney might be. It's more like Shrek. There's fun song montages, and they do add to the story, but they aren't the be-all and end-all, and the overall success of the film does not hinge on them completely. But where the film does succeed overall is the voice acting. As per usual, honestly, it's par for the course for this franchise. The voice actors. I swear they just go all out and have fun with these silly scripts. Gru, always excellent. The Minions, so well voiced. A lot of the jokes that the Minions are involved with, I don't think they'd be half as funny without those goofy little voices doing what they do. Without that, I think it would fall flat. On top of that, I'm very impressed that despite it being one guy doing all the voices, even in scenes between the different Minions, he makes them all sound slightly different, but also the same, so it feels like they're their own little species. And I think that's very impressive. And then there's Will Ferrell as the villain, and he does great voices, so I wasn't shocked he was really good here. I just think he was very underutilized as the main villain. He didn't get enough time to really shine, but what we did get was great. And this takes us to the story. Just a brief run through before we get to the nitty gritty. Okay, so the story picks up at least 9 months after the events of the third film. After all, Lucy's given birth to their son, and he's capable of doing things. I know this is like The Simpsons, and nobody really ages even if babies age up, but it's clearly sometime later on the timeline regardless. But Gru goes out on a mission to arrest his old rival Maxime Lamel at their school reunion, which almost goes sideways immediately, when Maxime reveals he's been infused with ultra-powerful cockroach parts and tries to kill Gru, but he's arrested and life goes on until he escapes prison. He then declares war on Gru, who's sent into witness protection pretty much with his family and 3 minions, whilst the other minions are employed by the AVL, with some of them even being powered up into the Mega Minions. Superpowered minions with special powers like the Fantastic Four, except this time it's 5. Gru tries to settle into his new life as a solar panel salesman before he's blackmailed by the neighbor's kid Poppy into stealing a pet badger mascot that belongs to his old alumni. She wants to get started on becoming a villain too, and when they succeed, Maxime tracks them down and steals Gru Jr., and so Gru, Poppy, and the Mega Minions, they all team up to defeat Maxime Lamel and end the threat. So yeah, the story, for me, is where it all falls apart, because it feels so disjointed. First, you have this plot with Lamel, and that works. He gets out, Gru goes into hiding, and you'd expect much of the meat of the film is about trying to dodge him. He might come into town, and Gru's trying to avoid him. Hijinks ensue. But it's not. Instead, Maxime disappears from much of the story, only to come back for the climax with 1 or 2 other scenes to check in with him during the course of the tale. And when Gru and him are together, the chemistry is high. It's exciting, especially their rivalry surrounding who stole the idea from whom to sing Karma Chameleon at their school talent show. And so, you have this really interesting dynamic, but the actual meat of the film does not explore it. Instead, it surrounds Gru being blackmailed by this new character Poppy, and then busting into the school to steal the badger. And whilst that does lead into the ending where she helps Gru, it also doesn't feel like the same connected storyline. It's messy, I didn't like it. Same with the Mega Minions. You spend time with them, you see them get powers only for them to all fail, and then they get summoned at the end and arrive after Lamel has already lost just to deliver that knockout blow. It just, I don't know, it felt like wasted time you could have used to give some of the other characters, like the 3 daughters, to give them some sort of story because they don't really have one, which is a shame because they're so important. Margot is seemingly bullied at their new school, but that's never followed up on. Edith stands up to her martial arts teacher, but that's never followed up on. And then there's a really distinct lack of Agnes in this movie. They have scenes with Lucy and Gru, but it feels like they're somewhat left by the wayside in favour of Gru Jr., who's a cute character, don't get me wrong, but he can't talk and he adds very little to the story. And I just came out of the film thinking, yeah, the jokes were funny and there were lots of laugh out loud moments, but the story was very weak, it was disjointed and kind of boring. It really hinged on Gru interacting and bonding with brand new characters instead of the old school ones. But the problem is, you come into the movie wanting to see the old school interactions, to see him explore those interactions more, those dynamics. I mean, the heart of the first movie, the best movie in the franchise in my opinion, is Gru and his bond with his girls. It feels like they've forgotten this along the way, that the movies are supposed to be about found family, Gru and the minions, Gru and his girls, and that's a shame. And then the one new character that Gru had chemistry off the charts with was the main villain, but it felt like they bungled that because they have him disappear for ages at a time. They had 94 minutes in this film, and yet this is what they served up to us. It was decent, but the story was so weak, and that's what lets it down in the end, and that's a real big shame, and I'm actually really disappointed. Yeah, really nothing else to say other than that. It was just, bleh, very whelmed. And so with all that being said, these just been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the movie if you've seen it? Did you like it? Hate it? Do you agree with me? Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think I'm being too harsh. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.